This is Pastor's Perspective. We're here every Monday through Friday providing answers on a variety of topics, including the Bible, end times, other religions, and the family. Call right now with your question at 1-888-564-6173. That's 888-564-6173. You can also post your question at facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective. And now here again is your host, Brian Perez.
Hello there. I'm not ready, so let me introduce my guests or my guys in the studio, and they can talk amongst each other for just like a couple of minutes. We've got John Huang and Bobby Conway. John, how are you? Welcome back. It's good to see you, bro. Bobby, how are you doing? All right, you guys, talk amongst yourselves.
Wow. It's good to be back.
It's good to see you, John.
How are you, Bobby?
Yeah. I'm doing good, bud. How was your time off? Did you get some good, refreshing time?
You know, it was actually really, really sweet. So for you that don't know, I had the opportunity to take a month off, be on sabbatical, which is something that I did not really think that I needed until I walked into it. Man, I had no idea how much I needed that time. So this year marks 30 years of pastoral ministry for me. So I'm just so thankful that God has given me the opportunity to serve in this calling. But I'm one of those types of people, I do not know how to Sabbath. I do not know how to rest. And so when this opportunity was presented, I was a little hesitant, but then walking into it, I just really learned firsthand the importance that God actually knows what he's talking about when he says to take a Sabbath. And
rest.
I had no idea how physically, emotionally, mentally I needed this time of rest. And so it was really good. There were a few things that I had hoped to accomplish. One was obviously to immerse myself in Scripture. And so I was able to just read through a whole bunch of books of the Bible and just to meditate and pray through that. I also wanted to have some meaningful conversations. And so just even thinking back to day one of the sabbatical, Bobby, you were here for the leadership conference, and just to be able to catch a few minutes with you and just to talk, that was just one of those moments where I could just check the box and said, man, that was a meaningful conversation for me. It was so refreshing, so encouraging. And then there were books that I wanted to read that were not, preaching books or, church ministry-oriented books, but they were more of just personal walk with Jesus, more of like just soul care kind of stuff. And so just being able to just read and learn and be refreshed with that. And then the big part was just to go have some fun. And that's another thing that I realized that I just don't do well at. I'm a very driven person when it comes to ministry. And so I remember when someone asked me a question, well, do you have any hobbies? I literally paused and said, no. So it was just the weirdest thing. I just realized even fun is a discipline for me. And just to be able to get together with people and just to have fun, that was a huge, huge deal. So, this last month was just super refreshing. But I also know that there were people praying for me this last month. And just to be able to reaffirm, man, God answered your prayer. It was super restful.
That's great, John. And I'm so glad you got some time to rest. I can relate to that too. I mean, I guess fun is relative because a lot of people, they're more playful, they're energizer type personalities. And I think what can happen sometimes is the things that you might deem as fun, or I might, like sitting around and reading a philosophy book, that would be like torture to other people. But going water skiing, to me, sounds like torture. So it is kind of relative, isn't it?
Totally. Yeah, for me, the benefit of just being able to go, for example, on long walks, just to be able to, I mean, there is a thing that I think that sometimes we dismiss and we neglect in our conversations about ministry, but how important exercise is. Exercise is really important, just not only for our physical well-being, but for our emotional, our mental. And I just see the value of how Jesus just walked everywhere. And, in the book of Acts where Paul had, instructed his partners to get on the boat and to meet him where he was going. But Paul decided, I'm going to opt to walk. And he walked for miles. And I just wonder, for him, not only for the exercise, but that just gave him miles of opportunity to just be alone with Jesus and to find that quiet moment too. So I think that just being able to understand the importance of that, because sometimes we think that that isn't spiritual, but there is a spiritual component to that. And I think that we have a lot to learn from the example of Jesus there.
Did you walk on the water as well, or?
No, I just walked on trails, lots of trails. I was able to go up to Carmel, and I'll tell you what, it was the first time I actually went on this long walk there at Paso Lobos. Man, amazing. And just something beautiful about just being in the midst of God's creation. It was like every turn was like, wow, wow, wow.
Very cool.
And it was just felt like my soul was just filled up.
How fun.
Yeah.
Well, now that you guys have done catching up, I'm back. So just had some technical things to get through, and I think I'm through with them. So, here we are. 888-564-6173 is the phone number, 888-564-6173. Let's start with at least one Facebook question. This one's sent in by Paul, who asks, should Christians attend gay weddings or any kind of ceremony that has the intent of mimicking biblical ceremonies, but for spiritually dark underlying purposes? Bobby, what would you say about that?
I think a lot of this will come down, as we talk about often on this program, to a personal conscience. The phrase mimicking a Christian ceremony, I'm sympathetic to how that could really wreck a person's conscience. I think on one level, any marriage ceremony, even if it's before a justice of the peace, is going to mimic some of the things that we would see in a Christian wedding ceremony. That is to say, two people committing their life to one another. So all that to say, would I personally attend a ceremony of a Muslim that was getting married before imam? Or would you go to a Hindu's wedding? Or would you go to a Buddhist wedding? And I would say, I personally would look at that as an opportunity, number one, just to learn what that looks like. Number two, just to show my friend that invited me, that I care about them as a person. And I don't think that a Muslim that would invite me to a wedding, if I'm a Christian pastor, for example, is going to think that I'm believing in Islam as a result of going. I think they would just interpret it as, you know what, you're showing up as my friend. So now let's turn the tables. Let's say that I had a Muslim friend and I was getting married and I invited a Muslim friend to the wedding. I could see them being torn up. Oh, do I go to the Christian wedding? And I would think, why are they being so torn up? I mean, if they showed up at the wedding, I wouldn't think that this person's becoming a Christian. I would just think that they're there as a friend. So I think sometimes we forget to turn the tables, to think about that. And for me personally, even when it relates to homosexual weddings, I don't agree with a homosexual wedding any more than I think that two people coming together to make a commitment to Allah, who I don't believe exists, I at the same token, I can see there's relational capital that we can build. And I think there's a way that we can still let people know what it is that we believe, and they can know where our stance is. And so if we show up at a Muslim wedding, a Buddhist wedding, a homosexual wedding, a Hindu wedding, I think that the Buddhist, the homosexual, the Hindu, or the Muslim, they can all know that we are committed Christians, and just because we're there doesn't mean that we're saying we believe in it.
All right. John, any thoughts?
Man, that was a solid and super practical answer, Bobby. I really appreciate that. That was great.
Good job, Bobby.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, bro.
888-564-6173, our number. Paul, thank you for sending in your question on facebook.com/pastorsperspective. And Paul, when he first sent in his question, it was kind of like should Christians attend gay weddings or any kind of pagan ceremony? So I asked him to clarify what he meant by a pagan ceremony, because different people have different ideas about what pagan ceremonies are. Some people don't even put up Christmas trees because they figure, oh, that's a pagan thing to do. So that's why I had the more elaborate answer after Paul wrote back and sent in his definition of a pagan ceremony, anything that has the intent of mimicking biblical ceremonies, but for spiritually dark underlying purposes. So again, just because different people have different thoughts on what a pagan ceremony might be. 888-564.
And I also think too, I also think too, we should consider it an honor that somebody cares about us enough to invite us. And I think what we can do sometimes as Christians is we get really suspect over people, and we can look at them as something wrong. But think about what that means, that somebody's inviting us to a wedding. It doesn't mean that we are going there in agreement with it. A lot of times what's happened in wedding ceremonies, speak now or forever lose your peace. And we've said as pastors, your very presence being here means that you agree with it. Well, where does it say that in the Bible, that our presence being there means that we agree with it? And where does it say, speak now or forever lose your peace? So here's an example where we have to be careful as Christians to make sure that extra biblical traditions aren't locking up our conscience. So that is to say, when we are invited, we can look at it as just an honor that someone cares about us enough. And we can take that as an opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to attend. Obviously, you know that if I was getting married, we look at this a little bit differently. So I'd hate for you to think that my presence means that I'm behind it, if that's a concern. But look at it as a relational opportunity for future evangelism is the way that I would see it.
Yeah, good point. 888-564-6173. Let's start our time on the phones with Rick in California. You are on Pastor's Perspective. Rick, hello.
Hey, good afternoon. So, teaching on discipleship, the second part of the Great Commission, could it not just be teaching more rules or what commands, but really teach how to obey Christ or the need to obey Christ?
Now, remind everybody what the second part of the Great Commission is there, Rick.
The first part is baptizing them, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus, yeah. Matthew 28.
Yes. I guess I'm just trying to get more of a clarification on what your question is. What does it mean to teach all that Christ has commanded? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, and could it be not just teaching the commands to what to do, but is it really how to maybe obey, or the need to have somebody tell you how to live?
Okay, John, what do you think?
Well, the relationship that Jesus had with his followers was one of a rabbi with his disciples, right? And so in Israel's culture, especially at that time, that relationship was it was a unique one, because these disciples, these Talmudim, they would follow their rabbis, they would live with them, they would listen to them, learn from them, and the goal was to become like their teacher. And the goal of every rabbi-disciple relationship was to reproduce. And so the Talmudim would eventually go and start taking those things that they've learned from what they've watched and what they've heard from their rabbi, from their teacher, and to teach others to follow in the way of that rabbi. So for us as disciples of Jesus, our mission is to preach the good news, to herald the good news to people, and to show people the way of Jesus, and as people put their faith in Christ, to teach them the way of Jesus. And so when Jesus gave that Great Commission, Jesus is saying, okay, now you have been with me, you've learned from me, and now the Holy Spirit is going to come upon you. You're going to be empowered to be my witnesses. So the things that you've seen in me, the things that you've heard in me, the things that you've learned from me, now go and teach others. Make disciples, make other Jesus Talmudim, make other people that are going to walk in step in the way of Jesus. And, when people want, a clarification of what the teaching of the apostles was, for example, in Acts chapter 2, verse 42, it says that they devoted themselves steadfastly to the apostles' teaching. You don't have to look very far. Just read the New Testament. When you read the New Testament, we see how the apostles, they did what Jesus told them to do, and that was to teach the things that were commanded to them. And so So it could be the things that you may want to share with believers are the things that we see Jesus saying in the Gospels, or the truths that we see being proclaimed in the book of Acts, or the teachings, the instructions that we see in the New Testament. And that's one of the things I'm so thankful for, is that we have the New Testament, we have the Bible, and in them we can see the teachings of Jesus.
Yeah, Rick, what do you think of that so far?
Yeah, that's what I've basically been told my whole life, and so absolutely. I was just thinking last night or the day before about some people don't even know the need that they should obey somebody, and so that can go along with it as well.
Well, that's one of the great things about just reading and teaching through the New Testament scriptures, because you'll hit passages like there in Matthew chapter 7, when Jesus talks about those that listen to him and obey his teachings is like the wise man who built his house on the rock. And in contrast, those who hear but don't obey is like the foolish man who built his house on the sand. And James picks up on that there in James chapter 1, where he says, let's not be hearers of the word only, but doers. And so that's one of the things that we see in the New Testament, is not just to be informed, but to take the things that we learn from scriptures and put them into practice.
Thank you so much for your phone call today, Rick. 888-564-6173 is the number to call, and we've got Bobby Conway and John Huang on the program today. I know it's not Wednesday, it's Thursday. It's 2-hour Thursday, and we've got John Huang's Day here. So you're probably all confused. I am too, as you know, for if you listen to the first few minutes of the program today. But we'd love to hear from you guys for 2 hours today. Tommy Coda is going to join us for the second hour. 888-564-6173 is our number. Now, we did a Facebook question a few minutes ago about pagan ceremonies, so I think this phone call here from Erica is like a follow-up. Hi there, Erica. Welcome to the program.
Hi.
What did you want to know?
I want to know if it's okay. I see Halloween and like Christmas as a hobby. I like the decorations, and I just want to know if that's bad to think that, because God is my first and foremost all the time. He's my everything. But I enjoy decorating, and I just like the fall, the pumpkins, the Halloween decor. I just want to know your perspective on that.
Not to mention the pumpkin spice coffee that comes out. Well, pumpkin spice everything. In just a few weeks, we're going to see pumpkin spice Cheerios and pumpkin spice Fruit Loops, everything. But so Erica, how long have you been a believer?
Since 2008.
2000. Okay, so that's like 13 years. So have you been struggling with this for the past 13 years?
No, it just recently hit me.
Oh, okay. Okay. Bobby, what would you tell Erica?
When it comes to Halloween, we have to realize that our culture and the way that we recognize it, it's not the way that it would have been traditionally understood as Samhain. Samhain, when you could interact with the unseen realm, so to speak. People would dress up in costumes to ward off the dead so that they could be protected. This is not what people are thinking when they go out in today's culture. And so the idea of Halloween has really developed, in different cultures have taken on different ways of looking at it, be it in Wales or Germany or in Ireland, or even here in America. And so today, yes, it's very much a commercialized event. I think as Christians, we shouldn't be celebrating death. So I don't think it's healthy if we're going out and we're getting a bunch of decorations of skulls and dead people, and we're standing at the door, and when the kid opens the door, or when we open the door, we fire up a chainsaw and then chase the kids. That's the kind of stuff we should avoid, right? But is there anything wrong with fall, with pumpkins, with corn? I would say no. And I would say that those that do shut their door, turn all their lights off like the Jehovah's Witnesses do, we need to realize that Halloween is an opportunity for us to turn our strangerhood into a neighborhood. What other time of the year do you have more people knocking on our door than on Halloween? And so if we just keep our doors locked and our lights off, it's an opportunity that we miss, I think, to just engage, to be a friendly smile. We can decorate in such a way that I think doesn't contradict, what it would mean to be the light of the world. And yet at the same token, we cannot be looked at as sort of these isolators who just go dark in the midst of Halloween, assuming that everybody is out in the midst of some satanic worship of sorts. Now, one last thing is I would say there are some still who are a part of witchcraft and Satanism that do evil things on that particular night. And so it's also an opportunity for us just to bow our head and ask the Lord to protect against the evil that will take place on a day like that. But just because some do that doesn't mean that we need to associate that with everyone.
And Bobby, the chasing of kids down the street with a chainsaw, that was something you used to do before you became a Christian, right? You haven't done it since? Or no comment?
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking about like this whorehouse up in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and why in the world we pay $25 a ticket for somebody to dress up with a chainsaw and fire that bad boy up and then scare the bejeebies out of us, I don't know. But we do that kind of a thing. And so all that to say, there's probably a better way to be a witness for Christ than with a chainsaw.
I would agree. Now, Erica, do you know people who would disagree, other believers who say that you should not be celebrating Christmas or Halloween or anything like that?
Yes, a couple of people tell me that I shouldn't, but I don't celebrate it for the skulls and the witchcraft. I do it for the fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And John, what do you tell people who are dead set on not celebrating Christmas or Easter, and they're thinking, or Halloween, and they're thinking, oh, you're trying to change my mind? No, but the Bible says blah, blah, blah. What do you tell them?
Yeah, if people don't want to celebrate it, it's totally fine. It's it's totally up to them to not celebrate, because like what Bobby said earlier, I mean, this is a conscience matter, and Paul said in Romans 14 that whatever is not of faith is sin. And so if a person just feels like this would violate my conscience, then we would say, don't violate your conscience. Right. Don't celebrate that holiday.
Yep. Erica, thanks for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. Let's go to Virginia. Here is Nick. Welcome to the program, Nick. How are you?
Hey, good. I'm glad I got on early.
Yeah, that way you don't have to hold so long, right?
I have a kind of a long question, but it's on the same train of thought, so shouldn't be too hard to follow. Romans 13, 1 through 6, regarding submitting to governing authorities.
Yes.
And it says in there, for rulers hold no terror for those who do right. What happens, first question, what happens if the governing authorities begin to say what was wrong in God's eyes is now right? And then verse 3 says, do you want to be free from fear of authority? Then do what is right. Is that what is right in God's eyes, or what is right in the governing authorities' eyes? And the third question, which is on the same train of thought here, does it specifically say in Revelation not to receive the mark of the beast, or that just those who do receive it are either killed or they can't buy or sell? And are we to assume that it's Christians who are refusing the mark of the beast? And is there anywhere in the Bible specifically where God tells people to resist authority, and what should that resistance look like if, something like the government was trying to mandate something that might cause bodily harm? John, what do you say?
Well, that's a lot right there.
Yeah. Hope we can get them all in. Let's see. Go ahead.
But we'll start with the authority part. In the Romans 13 passage, Paul the Apostle is obviously talking about governing authorities. There, for Paul, the relationship would be him and Rome. And so Paul here is recognizing that in order for any society to function well, that there has to be a structure, and government is a means by which that structure happens. And so there are going to be people that in some nations, they have the benefit of electing their leaders into office. Other people, it's more of inheriting leaders. Some could be good leaders, some could be bad leaders, and yet we recognize the leadership. And so as Paul, it's interesting in 1 Timothy when Paul is also talking about the same topic, he talks about praying for these kings and rulers because God desires all people to be saved. And he said that in that we could live peaceful lives, that we could live in a society where it's functioning, it's working, and there seems to be this understanding in Paul's mind that as long as that there are those liberties for us to continue the advancement of the gospel, let's take advantage of that. And so the kingdom of God always superseded how they thought about the kingdoms of this world. And so for them, the primary interest was the furtherance of the gospel. And so as there were opportunities for them to submit to the authorities, to understand, as the whole tax question came up to Jesus, and Jesus said, render to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, but render to God what belongs to God. There is that ordering that we recognize and we respect it. Now, again, Paul here is talking about the ideal. Like, it's the ideal to have good leaders in place. But like in Paul's case, where Nero was in control or in power, not every society, not every time is going to have good leadership. And yet, if within those contexts there are administrations and that there are laws that are being set into place, as long as it doesn't violate the Christian's conscience in their worship of God, Paul is just saying, just submit to it. But at any time, if the government puts Christians in a church to say, here are the clear, a denial of the clear teachings of Scripture, a denial forcing people to make a stand of abandonment to Christ. We're not talking about personal preferences, because there's a lot of people that have different personal preferences to what they think are the things that the government is imposing on them that is anti-Christian. Hey, we live in a world that is anti-God. And so we could assume that there's going to be anti-Christian policies, non-Christian policies, but whenever any of that stuff is imposed that would violate the Christian's conscience to say, I'm going to be a dedicated follower of Jesus, and the government says you can't pray, like in the case when Daniel in Babylon, the law was you can't pray to God. Daniel said, no, I'm going to pray to God. Or any times they said you can't preach the gospel. Peter and John said, hey, we're going to obey God, not man, because those were clear violations of God's mandate. That's where the church always has to recognize that King Jesus is our king, and we are going to serve and follow him because our kingdom is the kingdom of God. Now, going back to the Revelation passage, we need to remember that the receiving of the mark of the beast is not just a political action, it is a worship action. And so when you read in the book of Revelation that those who receive the mark of the beast, it's not just about the commerce. It's people are choosing to worship the Antichrist. And this message that we read about in the book of Revelation, where an angel goes throughout the world telling people to not receive the mark of the beast, and then another angel, one of the three, so one angel is saying, don't receive the mark of the beast, and another angel is going throughout the world, and his message is, worship God. And so you've got one angel that's basically saying, don't worship the devil, don't worship the Antichrist, and another angel who's preaching the everlasting gospel saying, worship God. So all that to say that if we think of Revelation 13, the mark of the beast is merely a political thing, then I think we're missing the point. The drive there in Revelation 13 is a matter of worship.
Yeah. Nick, thanks so much for your phone call today on the Pastor's Perspective program. And we did get a question yesterday about the vaccine and wondering if getting the vaccine is like getting the mark of the beast. And we said no. We said the good news and the bad news. The bad news is the vaccine is not FDA approved yet. But the good news is that it's not the mark of the beast either. So that's the conclusion that we came up with. Nick, thank you so much for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. And a few minutes ago, we were talking about Halloween, and that reminds me, I forgot to tell you guys, Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa this year is returning, or I should say Glow is returning to Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa this year. We had to take last year off because of the whole COVID thing, but we are bringing it back this year, October 31st, on the campus of Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa. It's just this huge celebration. We open it up to the neighborhood and anybody else who wants to come out. Lots of games and food and tons of candy, as the announcer says here on the commercial that we play. But so mark your calendars for that, October 31st. More questions coming up, 888-564-6173.
Pastor's Perspective continues in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Pastor's Perspective continues with your question to 1-888-564-6173. And now here again is your host, Brian Perez.
Hello, welcome back. 888-564-6173 is the number to call. We've got author and apologist Dr. Bobby Conway from the 1 Minute Apologist channel on YouTube here. Also 1minuteapologist.com. On either of those two platforms, you can find like 1,200 videos that Bobby talks about different topics. You can also find the Unapologetic radio program there. And this weekend's episode coming up on many of these radio stations, and we invite you to tune in. Also here today in the studio, it's the return of John Huang. Yeah, we know it's not Huang's Day, it's Thursday, but John is here. And in fact, he took a whole month off, so we're going to use him a lot. I think he's coming in next week, not on a Wednesday, and the week after that, not on a Wednesday. So yeah, he's got to make up for all that time off. But it's good to have you here, John.
Oh, it's so great to be here, and I'm looking forward to all those non-Wednesday days.
Yes. Now, another thing you're looking forward to is the Calvary Chapel Bible College semester beginning in just a few weeks. Is it too late to enroll?
It is not too late to enroll, and I am so excited that we get to finally be in person. And so our semester is going to be a bit of a hybrid. We have a few classes that we're going to be offering online, but for the most part, they're going to be live in person. And if any of you are interested in going deeper in your understanding of the Bible and being taught by some great teachers, then I want to invite you to come and learn more about our Bible College here at Costa Mesa. We actually meet here in the KWAVE building here in Southern California. And you can sign up at ccbccostamesa.com. That's ccbccostamesa.com. You could also find out more about our school. And if you've already signed up and you want to register for classes, you can do that there too. We've got some great classes lined up, from church history to the Gospel of Mark to we've got systematic theology, we've got beginning Greek 1, and some other great just through the book studies as well. So would love to see you join us in the fall. So our semester kickoff is August 28th. First day of classes is August 30th. And we've got all the information that you need in terms of all the programs that we have available. You can find there at ccbccostamesa.com.
I think it's cool that you're offering the online classes still. Even though everything's opened up, people can still sign up online and take all the classes online in case somebody lives out of state or out of the area. They can still register and attend the classes that way. But if they are in person, it's here at the same building where the radio station is, the KWAVE building. You might run into like Michael David in the elevator. I mean, that would be just awesome.
But this is one of the benefits that we were able to gain during this whole COVID thing is, with the whole technology component side of things. So, for example, our Ecclesiastes class is going to be taught by a pastor who lives in Nashville, Tennessee. And so that's one of the benefits of having an online class is that we're able to pull in some great teachers, some great pastors, not limited to Southern California, but from other parts of the U.S. to come and teach. And so it's just it's going to be a great semester, great program.
So again, get all the details at CCBC, as in Calvary Chapel Bible College, ccbccostamesa.com. Check that out. Semester starts soon, so hurry up and get registered. 888-564-6173 is the number. Bobby Conway from the 1 Minute Apologist channel on YouTube is here as well. And in just a few days, he will be walking his little girl down the aisle. Are you
that's amazing.
Excited? Are you sad? Or a little bit of both, Bobby? What's going on? He's crying. He's crying on camera right now.
Yeah.
You just heard him.
Yeah, I'm crying. I'm super excited. I truly am. I mean,
he broke down. He can't go on.
I'll finish the statement.
Yes.
His daughter is amazing. His future son-in-law is amazing. It's going to be an amazing day, an amazing wedding, amazing food.
That's right. Yep.
What he said.
All that.
Yeah. Our prayers to Haley and her fiance. That's going to be great. All right. 888-564-6173 is our telephone number. And let's go now to Diane in California. Welcome to the program, Diane.
Hi. My question is regarding what happened with Moses when he hit the rock, and I know that Aaron, I believe, was very close with him as well. How did Aaron die, his brother?
Bobby, do we know that?
Well, I mean, we get a little bit of insight as far as how he died that the scripture doesn't say. We know, like Moses, he was not allowed to enter into the promised land. We know that in Numbers 20, verse 28, it says that Moses stripped Aaron of his garments and put them on Eleazar, his son, and Aaron died there on the top of the mountain. So this idea that we can see is that he went up to a mountain knowing he's going to die, knowing he's not going to go into the promised land. And you almost just get the sense that he died peacefully, right? There was nothing tragic. It's kind of hard when you read Numbers 20 to picture, okay, now Moses stripped Aaron of his garments, put him on Eleazar, his son, and then, Aaron was on top of the mountain and a lightning bolt just struck him dead, or he died in some painful way. It seems as if he would have just went to sleep, died peacefully, the way we would all hope to die would be my best speculation.
Yeah. What do you think of that, Diane?
Well, I always wondered. I just didn't know because it just sounded so weird the way that, as like you said, he just went up to this mountain and then he was gone. Mm-hmm. And I just, I don't know. And did Moses supposedly die the same way up on the mountain and fell asleep?
Yes. So, I don't really know how he or Aaron died, but yes, Moses had the opportunity to go up, and he would go up to the land, the hills of Moab, if my memory is serving me correctly, and he would look out over to Canaan, into the promised land, and he would get a visual look at the land that the people whom he led for 40 years would inherit, and then he too passed away. And so we don't really get an explanation of how he took his last breath. We just know that we do get some intel into the fact that there was this battle over his body that went down. And so some of the historic teaching is that they never showed, were never able to find his body because God's people would have worshiped the body. I don't know that that's the right explanation or not. I just know that that is kind of how that history is interpreted in an extra biblical way.
All right, Diane, thank you so much for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective at 888-564-6173. Kate in Colorado, you're next with Bobby Conway and John Huang. Thank you for calling 888-564-6173. How can we help you?
I have a situation that's arisen that I need to take someone to court, but I know in the scriptures it says we're not to take another Christian to the court. Mm-hmm. And let the world, pass judgment on us.
Right.
But I am trying to understand they are not acting like Christians, and where does their responsibility lay? And I'm wondering what I need to do because it's over $2,000.
Now, you say they're not acting like Christians. What leads you to believe that they're Christians in the first place? I mean, do they say that they're Christians? Do they go to church with you? I'm just trying to get a little bit of background.
I had a moving company come in and move me, and I talked to them and I witnessed to everyone about Christ, and they told me they were Christians, and they treated me really good, and I used them twice, and they damaged a table of mine. Mm-hmm. And now they're very rude to me. They tell me I'm harassing their people, and all I asked for was a business card so I could call the owner.
Right. John, what do you say about that? And keep in mind, we can't really offer legal advice on this program, but John, what would you say?
Yeah, I think the general thing would be to start by saying not everyone who claims to be a Christian is going to be a Christian, and so there's always going to be that factor. Now, in the 1 Corinthians passage, Paul here is obviously talking about like real Christians, like they're identifiable Christians, and there are going to be times that Christians aren't going to behave the way that they're supposed to, and so there are going to be times that there's going to be conflicts in relationships. But in that passage in 1 Corinthians, Paul was talking about how we want to try to spare ourselves from the ugliness that sometimes disagreements can breed, especially in such a public arena like in a court. And so as much as you can, to try to work it out outside of the courts within the context of a Christian platform, try to do that. And Paul even says the hard thing to say that, sometimes you might just have to say, I'll be defrauded in this because we just don't want the name of Christ blasphemed in the public arena. But having said that, it sounds like from what you're saying, it's not so much of an individual, but this is a business. And the thing with companies and with businesses, there is a standard that companies should seek to hold and abide by. And so this is one of those things that, we would say you need to pray about it and to hear from the Lord. But just because someone says that they're a Christian or they have a fish on their business card or a fish on their bumper sticker, that doesn't mean that they're Christian. A lot of times people do that simply because they're trying to get the sympathies of potential customers because they just know that this is a selling point. And so in this case, what I would encourage you to do is, Jesus said, by their fruits you will know them. And so, I would hope to think that if people really are Christians, then they would seek to behave like Christians. And when they, are told that they've done something wrong and they recognize it, that they would actually take the time to say, hey, let's try to work this out. But if people who claim to be Christians start behaving like non-Christians, I personally don't have a problem with taking legal action on things like that. I would make sure that I've got good grounds on that. But on the other hand, if if a person's conscience, someone that's listening to this program saying, I don't know if I could do that, then again, going back to what we said earlier, then this might be one of those moments that you would just say, you know what, I will trust the Lord in this and I'll be defrauded in this. But again, this is something that we just really want to encourage you to pray to the Lord, seek His wisdom, seek His counsel, and but just because someone calls himself a Christian doesn't mean that they're a Christian.
Right. Bobby, any insight that you would give to Kate?
Well, I would say if any batch of people would have not looked Christian, it would have been the Corinthians. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So when we begin to speak about these people aren't acting Christianly, well, neither were the Corinthians. That's why Paul was writing this letter. So they definitely did not look like they were living the Christian life. All that to say, though, we need to look at the context that's taking place here. It seems as if Paul's writing in such a way that, first and foremost, try to settle that amongst yourself. So part of church leadership, there should be a process to help arbitrate situations like this. So maybe what people can do in certain situations is figure out, is there a way that the church can help? If that's not the place, and if the church doesn't have that process in place, well, then the fear that Paul's writing against is that you guys going into court doesn't create a public scandal. And at the end of the day, the way that our legal system's set up today, if somebody takes somebody to court, a Christian takes a Christian to court, I don't even think that the world's going to know. It's not like everybody's going to know. And I mean, we're used to justice. And so we have to understand the way that we do arbitration, if it's in the church, the way it's done in the courts. And so I think it's always a last resort. But I do think that if somebody, like John said, chose that route, we shouldn't rush to that. Vengeance is of the Lord's. The Bible does say, it's why not be wronged? why not be defrauded? Like we need to ask ourselves the question, why do I need justice? And why am I not willing to be defrauded? Why am I not willing to be wronged? We need to go through that spiritual journey. And at the end of the day, I can envision certain circumstances whereby, man, this really puts somebody in a bad bind and they really could use the help. And so looking at a court in a way to just be helpful, to kind of help arbitrate something, that doesn't mean people are necessarily trying to be evil, and it doesn't mean that the witness of Christ is going to be tarnished, because frankly, I don't think people are really going to know. I would lastly just say, make sure that whatever you decide, that your heart goes through a process of making sure that you remain in a posture of love and not bitterness when all's said and done.
Kate, thanks for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. 888-564-6173 is the number to call. We're here till 5 p.m. Pacific time today, so we'd love to hear from you. Bobby Conway and John Huang here for the remainder of this hour. And then next hour, John will step out and Tommy Costa will step in. He'll be on for the second hour of Pastor's Perspective. By the way, Tommy is going to be speaking at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa this Sunday.
This Sunday morning?
Yeah, because Pastor Brian Brodersen is still in England. Creation Fest is wrapped up now, or is it still going on?
Yeah, Creation Fest is wrapped up, and now they're moving into the Refresh Conference, the European Refresh Conference.
Awesome. So Tommy will be here on August 8th. And then who's going to be here on August 15th?
Some
Bobby?
amazing guy is going to be here the following Sunday.
Oh, he's not responding. So either he's froze again or he doesn't know that he's the guy that's speaking on August 15th.
Conway.
Yes,
yeah,
Bobby
that's going to be
Conway.
a fun Sunday.
Yes, it will. So come on out to Calvary Costa Mesa, August 15th for Bobby Conway. All right, 888-564-6173. Bobby, you did know you're teaching on August 15th, right?
I am. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm going to be speaking in the book of Habakkuk. So I'd love to have some people that are listeners of Pastor's Perspective cruise out and see us.
Cool. That'll be fun.
I get to introduce you on that Sunday. I'm looking forward to that.
How nice.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great, man. I'm looking forward to that too, bro.
888-564-6173 is the number. Sarah has a question for us now. Hi there, Sarah. How can we help you?
Hi, guys. Thanks so much for taking my call.
I love the energy. I love the enthusiasm. My goodness. That was awesome.
Oh, thank you. Alrighty. Well, I wanted to add a question to my questions. My first question is about the Bible and the order of the books. I don't think they're chronological. I know that Haggai is like way later in the Old Testament, but is correlated with Ezra and Nehemiah. So I was just wondering, how is the Bible organized? Is it chronological order or what order? And then also, what was the website for the Calvary Chapel Bible College? Is it ccbcostamesa.com? And thank you so much.
John, why don't you take that part there?
All right, ccbcostamesa.com. So for Calvary Chapel Bible College, costamesa.com.
Thank you.
Did you get that?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. ccbcostamesa.com. And Bobby, why are the books in that order?
Well, I think that if you want to read books in chronological order, the good news is we have chronological Bible that you can look at and read through to kind of get a better picture of the chronology. So rather than kind of talking about, how Job's the oldest book of the scriptures, but then, kind of Genesis chapters maybe 1 to 10, and then the book of Job would be there, and then you would pick up in the process. It would be better just to pick up a chronological Bible and kind of see the way that they've laid out those books, because sometimes we need to realize certain portions of a particular book. So let's say in the book of Psalms, Psalm 90, for example, and that's talking about a particular point in history, whereas the rest of the book of Psalms is talking about another point in history. It's very difficult. So it's much easier to just have the books the way that they are, because you're piecemealing certain passages together in order to pull off a chronology. And therefore, that's why it's a good idea to go ahead. I mean, you could just type on Google, what is the chronological order of the Bible? Mm-hmm. Now, what that'll do for you is it'll let you see it, but it's going to be very difficult to kind of retain all of that information in your head anyway. So what are some practical things that we can know? Number one, that the books that we have, that is the 66 books, they're not in chronological order. Number 2, the oldest book of the Bible is Job. Number 3, if you want to read a chronological Bible, hey, good news. Number 4, there are certain books of the Bible that have sections that refer to events that occurred hundreds of years before the particular book that is being discussed or read. And so if you just kind of keep those principles in order, that will help you as you think about this issue.
Yeah. But why did they even put it in that order anyway, John? What would you add?
Well, yeah, the Bible that we have, the orders is different. Obviously, for example, in the Old Testament, it's different than what we would find it in the Hebrew Bible. But what's so great about the way that it's organized in our Bibles is that we could neatly order each of these books under topics, under categories. And for example, the first 5 books of the Bible are generally called the Torah or the instructions. So that would be from Genesis to Deuteronomy. And those are generally ascribed to Moses as the author. And then starting with Joshua, the next 12 books that we have listed in our Old Testament, those are the books of history. So they tell us the story from when Israel enters into the Promised Land all the way to when Judah is taken into Babylonian captivity, and then after the captivity, they're allowed back into their land. And in that, we have the stories, the final books of Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. They tell the story about the return to Jerusalem, the rebuilding of Jerusalem, the rebuilding of the temple. And then Esther tells us the story of what happened to the Jewish people that remained there in Persia. And so all of that gives to us a history of Israel. And then starting with Job, the next 5 books of the Bible, we have what are known as the writings or the books of poetry. And so these are expressive literature, poetic literature. And then the final section of the Old Testament, we have the prophets, starting with Isaiah, ending with Malachi. And some people even speak of the major prophets and the minor prophets. And not because one prophet is more important than the other, but in terms generally because of the size of their books. And so the Old Testament fits those categories. And when you get to the New Testament, the first 4 books of the New Testament, we have the Gospels, or the stories of Jesus, Matthew on through John. And then you've got Acts, which is a book of history. It tells us the first 30 years of church history. And then starting with Romans all the way to the book of Jude, then you have what are known as the letters. You have the letters of Paul, you have the letters of Peter and John and James and Jude. And so all of those letters fit into that category. And then the Bible ends with apocalyptic literature, which is the book of Revelation, which consummates everything that began in the book of Genesis. So in our Bibles, it's great when you're able to just look at it categorically. And so when someone says, hey, what's the book of Isaiah? We can say, well, that's a prophetic book. And what's the book of Joshua? Well, that's a historic book. But it's interesting, in the Hebrew Bible, there are books like, for example, the books of Samuel that are also regarded not just as historical books, but as prophetic books. And so, but for us, it's just the way it's categorized. It's just a neat way of us being able to understand and identify the flow of these different books and the genres of the Bible.
Yeah. All right, Sarah, thanks for your question. And we hope to see you at the Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa Bible College, either in person or online at ccbccostamesa.com. And let's see if we can squeeze in one more before the break here. Ryan in Nevada, welcome to the program. How can we help you?
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to, so I got saved when I was 19, and I experienced living water, like, in my heart and soul, and also the peace of Jesus in my soul when I was in my young 20s.
Okay.
When I was 23, I had a dream, and in my dream, my vision was blurry. So a little later, I used to be a drug addict, and my vision went blurry in real life, and I felt something get into my chest. At that point, like with the same place where I felt living water and peace in my soul, and I thought I was demon possessed.
Okay.
I learned later that you know from Charles Stanley that you can't lose your salvation. I'm a child of God forever, being born again, and so God's given me like over 3 years clean now by His grace, and but I've since then the times you're coming off of methamphetamine, I've felt in my chest, like literally, like in my soul, like an evil spirit moving like slowly like a snake. So I don't feel that, like that's only a couple times, but I I still feel this something in my chest, and I know that the Holy Spirit's in me and everything, but I just want to know, like, I've gotten to the point, like, I don't want to believe things that are wrong, I know the Holy Spirit's in me and I'm saved eternally, but I still feel this thing in my chest, so I don't know what is there like a squatter, am I carrying around, is there a demon, like, attached to my body?
Bobby, we've only got about 45 seconds left, and I don't know if we can give an answer, but help him as best as you can.
Yeah, no, I know. This is a question I wish we had more time to help him with, because he's obviously struggling. I would say, of course, it's not a snake or a demon. If you're a believer, it sounds exactly like anxiety to me. And so that's what I would encourage you to recognize. Anxiety can be horrific. I would go and see a doctor, ask questions about anxiety. It could be general anxiety disorder. That's very common for people who are addicts to experience prolonged struggles with anxiety, a tightening of the chest. It could also be coupled with stress. So I think it's more of that. And that's my advice. Just go see a doctor, talk to them about that, and see what they can do to help you.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with talking to a doctor about things like anxiety. And, so
that's right.
Please, Ryan, go get that checked out. Thank you for calling in today on Pastor's Perspective. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to do another hour of the program. If you're on hold right now, stay on hold. We'll try to get to you guys first. And then everybody else, you can call in during this next hour from now till 5 p.m. Pacific time. 888-564-6173 is the number to call. For Bobby Conway and John Huang, I'm Brian Perez. Have a great rest of your day. Tommy Coda coming in for the second hour. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to Pastor's Perspective. We trust you've been blessed and had your question answered. Join us Monday through Friday and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective. The preceding was sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, California.